Hello, everyone. My name is Don, the movie reviewer, and today we're going to be talking about a movie that is based on a true story called Brian Banks.
I am innocent, and the truth matters. I know the system doesn't care about me.
But you didn't deserve what happened to you.
Brian's gonna run out of time.
I'll tell you what's extraordinary. I am.
You are always supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, which, during certain circumstances, that isn't the case. You're guilty until proven innocent, which is the case for Brian Banks.
I did not know nothing about sex, so.
You're watching never-before-aired video of Juanetta Gibson and Brian Banks in the minutes before her stunning confession that she lied when she said the high school football star raped her 10 years ago.
In 2002, Brian Banks was falsely accused of raping a woman named Juanetta Gibson. Even though there was no proof of this incident actually happening to Juanetta Gibson, there was no DNA, there was no proof, no evidence, no nothing. Brian Banks had to take a plea deal in order to only get a shorter sentence than what he was already going to be handed. The saying in this movie is, "Fuck the system." There is no justice in the justice system, and Brian Banks is a perfect example of that actually being the case.
What is the system? It's people. Yeah, it's cops, lawyers, judges. If one of them had just cared enough to even go down to that hallway Kenesha said I dragged her, listen to how the tiniest little noise echoes, I wouldn't have this damn thing on my leg.
For the next 5 years of my life, 24/7, I wore this GPS on my ankle. I had to plug this thing into a wall twice a day, wait for a red light to turn green, which would take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. I couldn't live within 2,000 feet of any square park. I had to register as a sex offender for the rest of my life.
This movie is directed by Tom Sadiak, and Tom Sadiak is an interesting choice of director for this movie, because when I look at his resume, I see movies like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Nutty Professor starring Eddie Murphy, Liar Liar starring Jim Carrey, Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey, and Evan Almighty with Steve Carell. And then so when I watch this movie called Brian Banks, this doesn't seem like it has the same director template that Tom Sadiak has used with his previous movies. But I have to say, what Tom Sadiak does with this, he delivers on the editing, on the cinematography. Usually when I see movies like this that are based on true stories and they're dramas, sometimes the director wants to play it up in a hammy, cheesy way, kind of like a Hallmark movie. Now, there's nothing wrong with Hallmark movies if that's your thing, but when I go to the theater, I want to see a movie that is gritty, that is dark, that is realistic, that is not cheesy, that really hits home on the realistic standpoint of the situation that it is presenting to me. And so, watching this movie, it has all of those elements in it. It has that realistic nature and tone to it. While at the same time, you could say there are little tiny elements in here that present a little sprinkle of cheese.
Success to me today is this moment. Living this moment well. Listening to you, being open to Brian, what he has to teach me, share, moving me, inspiring me. This moment lived well, to me, is success.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's dope.
Let's all now meditate.
Yeah, that's all for the moment.
There's a character in this movie who plays Brian Brooks' PO, his parole officer. And this PO is behaving in a very generic, cheesy way. Every time we see the parole officer on screen, he's always trying to bring Brian Brooks down. He's always trying to bring him down. And it just constantly happens throughout the movie, to where I become annoyed by it, because that seems like the only reason why the parole officer is there, to constantly be an obstacle for Brian Brooks to try to get through. But besides all of that stuff with the parole officer, this movie has an interesting nature to it from the very beginning. Even though it starts off with narration, it sucks me right in to what is exactly happening within Brian Banks's world. Then we go from learning the history and the past of what happened with Juanetta and Brian Banks. Then we see Brian Banks trying to clear his name when he meets Greg Kinnear's character, Justin Brooks. And Justin Brooks is a man who operates in California, and he is in charge of the California Innocence Project, which is a program that tries to get people who are wrongfully accused off of the hook and have them live a free life so they won't have to go about their existence, being profiled as whatever it is that they were falsely accused of. My verdict for this movie is it's great. It's a great movie. It has all of the elements in it that suck me right in to the narrative, and it makes me emotionally invested in the characters, and the progression of the story is executed flawlessly to where I'm engaged in everything that is happening. I like the progression and the flow of this movie. The director really did a good job capturing the emotion behind Brian Brooks, because the actor really put in the effort, but the director here as well constructed it in a way that sucked me in. So all of the elements in here came into play flawlessly. There's nothing wrong with this movie. I can't come up with anything wrong with this movie. And that's all I have to say. So as always, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.
Brian had his surface shattered, which was, I'm a football player. I'm one of the best in the country. I got a future. That's when you have the opportunity to go deeper. And like Brian said, it's going to go away at some point. You're not going to have the highest grossing film. You're not going to have the #1 hit single. You're not going to be one of the top recruits. And when that's taken away, who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you? And he shows us who he is.